Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation, How to Unlock the Value of AI in Your Business. My name is Dries Cronje and I'm the founder of the Deep Learning Café. We use AI in innovative ways to unlock value in your business. You can get hold of me on Twitter or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. To understand how we can use AI to unlock value in your business, we need to take a step back and understand what AI is. And I'm not talking about mathematical equations. In fact, you won't see any mathematical equations today. I'm talking about AI in a business sense. I'm talking about what is realistically within reach of almost every business and almost every industry. Our perceptions of AI has largely been formed through pop culture. In pop culture, AI has advanced intelligence, almost always shows emotion, and is almost always busy plotting, taking over the world. Following the media and the hype around AI, you'll often get these kind of headlines. AI can do anything humans can do. AI will take our jobs. AI is just ML. And then I think one of the favorite ones is the headline around singularity. That point where AI becomes as intelligent as humans or even surpass human intelligence. Listening to and reading all those kind of headlines, it's almost impossible not to think that we are in some sort of serious trouble. The robots are coming for us. Are we really in trouble? Well, the short answer is no. The reality is that AI is really good at narrow tasks, and I mean really good. AI has reached and surpassed human parity in a number of vision and language kind of tasks. Just look at the success AlphaGo had against Lee Sedol in the Chinese board game Go. Um, it's an incredible feat for AI, but the reality is AI is really bad at generalizing and at reasoning. So AI versus machine learning. I'm not getting in an argument over what is the definition of AI, and there's 100 different definitions, and everyone has an opinion. For our purposes today, let's just think of AI as a discipline and it's a way of thinking. And ML is a tool set, and ML solves specific set of ML problems. Now, a good way of understanding AI, and especially in a business sense, is to look at AI and successful AI companies. And we are looking at Google here, and not only because this is a GGG and it is Google orientated, but arguably because Google is the most successful AI company out there. Now, if you look at the icons on the right, all the Google products and services, AI is baked into every one of these products and all the rest. I mean, there's literally like hundreds of AI of products and services at Google, and AI is baked into every one of these. I mean, my absolute favorite over the last few months has been the autocomplete in Gmail. I mean, what a pleasure to just quickly get responses out by just tapping on your phone or tabbing on your computer, and you get a response out, and it's actually quite accurate. The other product here that has that has really good use of AI is Google Photos. Just how good Google is so good at, or Google Photos is so good at identifying you between your friends and your family and also your animals. Now, you might think that that's like really advanced AI and it's like a handful of AI. The reality is, if you look at the graph on the left-hand side, Google has, and this is about 2 years old, so you can add another couple of thousand there. But Google at that point, 2 years ago, had over 4,000 models in production. So what we can get from that is that there's no silver bullet. There's no one AI algorithm to rule them all. There are thousands of algorithms, and each one is good at a very narrow task. And to make that point clear, let's look at an example. Google has this service where you point, and everybody has seen it. You point your phone the camera at a sign somewhere. Maybe you're traveling and you're in a different country, in a foreign country, you don't understand the language. All you do is you point your camera at a sign, and Google will translate it for you. Now you might think that's just one model. The reality is there's at least 6 models in production, each one with a very narrow focus. There's a model that identifies the location of the sign, putting a box around that sign. Then there's a second model that takes that sign and runs it through OCR and extract text from it. There's a third model that identifies the language of the text. Then there's a fourth one, then probably the most important one, that translates the text into your language. There's a fifth one that tries to identify the font of the source sign. And then there's a sixth model that superimposes your text in the correct form on the screen of your phone. So as you can see, something that seems like a single task or two tasks actually is made up of a bunch of different tasks, each one with a very narrow focus. So how is a company with an AI-driven company, a company with an ML-first approach, different from your more traditional companies? And the answer is a lot simpler than you might think. I think the hardest part between an AI company and a traditional company is just taking that first step. So every traditional company, or every company that's been going for a few years and has a few employees and a few departments, has hundreds, maybe thousands of pieces of software or algorithms making business decisions. Most of the time, the rules for these algorithms are based on the intuition of someone senior in the business, someone that might have already left the business. And these rules, these business rules, are programmed by software engineers and software developers. Now, these pieces of algorithms, based on someone else's intuition, makes business decisions on a daily basis. And every one of those decisions affects the bottom line of this business. Now, how is a machine learning approach different? Well, with a machine learning, you listen to the data and you use the data. So machine learning approach is to take all the data you've got with labels, pass it through this machine learning model. This machine learning model, with every iteration, it gets a little bit better, and it improves on its accuracy by making small adjustments to the weight until you are happy with the result, and until you're happy with the accuracy, and you then take that model and you put it in production, you put it into the wild. Now, based on the two explanations of the difference between human engineered algorithms and ML models, it's easy to see that a rule-based system can only handle so much complexity, and it's obviously full of human bias. And it's also easy to see that the AI-driven approach, the ML models, can encapsulate a lot more complexity and clearly removes the human bias to a point. Now, a good example of this is a bank. Banks over the last 50 years have done a great job at making people feel very insignificant, making you feel like you're just another number. It's very good at automated responses. It's very good at a rule-based algorithm that tells you whether you can get an overdraft or not, and maybe even if you're lucky, send you a very generic message on your birthday. Now think about a more ML-based approach for a bank, a more modern bank. A bank using ML can give a more personalized experience. An ML approach applying for an overdraft, the bank now has the ability to take your history into account, your how many children you have in school, and there's so many more things and so many more complexities that the ML-driven models can take into account when making a decision on your overdraft. And overall, you just get a much more individualized experience. So at the end of the day, it's all about replacing heuristic rules with ML. ML usually has two stages. The first stage is the training stage. And it's a stage you can't get away from this. You have to train your model. This is where you pass samples through your model. Every time you pass it through the model, you calculate your accuracy and you make small adjustments, and you do that iteratively until you have an acceptable accuracy. Your model has acceptable accuracy. At that point, you publish your model, and your model is ready for inference. When your model is in the wild and it's in production, now you can pass it an image, and you don't know what this image is. And you can ask the model, and hopefully the model has generalized well enough to take your image and tell you whether it's a cat or a dog, even though it's never seen that image before, because it's generalized well enough. One of the big well, I think there's always a big surprise is when you look at how your effort is allocated on an ML project. I think it's easy to have the expectation that ML would go something like this, an ML project would go something like this. You set up your metric for success, you collect a little bit of data, you set up infrastructure, and then every data scientist's favorite pastime, you spend a lot of time fine-tuning and training your model, and then right at the end, you spend a bit of time on integration. The reality is it's completely different from that, and you have to take this into account when you plan your ML projects, and especially when you go into your big, just be aware of this when you take on your first project. The reality is that you'll spend time setting up your metric for success. Then you're going to spend a lot more time than anticipated on collecting, cleaning, and transforming your data. Even more time spent on setting up infrastructure. And then, to everybody's surprise, very disappointing, but you'll spend a tiny amount of time in the bigger scheme of things on fine-tuning your machine learning model, and then a big chunk of your time will go towards integration. I'm mentioning all these things, just be aware of it and keep it and take it into consideration. Now, a good way of looking at ML in your business is to look at an actual use case. We have partnered with a small boutique law firm in Johannesburg, and this boutique law firm was approached by a multinational mining company. Now, they were to provide this mining company with an assessment on the merits of a case. Now, the problem is that as a small mining company, as a small boutique law firm, they lack the resources and infrastructure of the big law firms. And they were under a very tight timeline. Now, by the numbers, this mining company dropped off a hard drive with a 29 gig zip file, and in the zip file there was over 11,000 emails and over 6,000 documents plus attachments. Now, for a more traditional law firm, you would just throw a bunch of your candidate attorneys at it. 2 weeks later, you will have your opinion on the merits of the case. Well, when you're a small law firm and there's only a handful of you look at technology, and we used AI. So how did we help them overcome this burden of so much data, limited time, limited resources, limited infrastructure? Well, number one, we used the power and the scale of the Google Cloud to process and transform the data, get the data into a format that that is readable and makes sense. Number two, and this is where the AI comes in, we used an advanced NLP models to build a semantic search index for this client. And number three, and this is always very important, and it's always the last thing on your mind, is make sure you develop an intuitive front end for your client. And in this case, we created an intuitive search interface for our client. So what was the outcome? Well, using AI, we were able to, or the client was able, using our tool, to only extract the most relevant documents. Now think of a more traditional way of searching through documents. If you use text words and you use text search, you either get no results or you get a lot of results back. And you've got no way to understand or to know which ones are more relevant than the others, because either there's a text, there's a match, or there's no match. Yes, text searches have become a little bit more smarter, and there's a little bit more fuzziness to it, and things like Elasticsearch and so on have made it a lot easier to search. But the bottom line is text search is still a mess and a head. With semantic search and using AI for search, what we were able to do is to actually find the most relevant documents. And all you had to do is to supply a text phrase. So you type out what you're looking for, and the AI-based search index will reply or will return the absolutely most relevant documents. And with only working through the most relevant documents, our client was able to write his opinion on the merits of the case in a matter of hours, in 4 hours. And needless to say, they exceeded the client's expectation. It literally blew their minds. And to put it into perspective, I took this anonymously to one of the large law firms in Sandton, and they quoted 2 weeks and 750,000 Rand for this project. I think this is a great use of technology to level the playing fields between big law firms and small law firms. So what do we do to unlock the value of AI in your business? I'm going to start you off with a quote. Tools are not meant to make our lives easier. Not really. They are meant to give us leverage so that we can push harder. Tools lift rocks. People build cathedrals. Okay, let that sink in for a moment. So what is the secret sauce? Now, if you're looking for a big secret, I think you will be disappointed to find out that the secret sauce is that there is no real secret. It's just a list of things every business across every industry can do to extract value using AI. Now let's dive into the things that you can do to use AI to extract value. The first thing is get your hands dirty. Get going and fail fast. Number two, keep humans in the loop. We are not trying to replace humans. We need humans to build these cathedrals. We need the humans to validate our data, to collect data. We need the humans to actually use the system. With humans, you build a kind of momentum that creates more value. And this might be a little bit different from a lot of the material I've seen over the years on getting going with AI, is make the process of training as easy as possible. Start thinking about your pipeline. Start thinking about your data processes and your data pipelines. Start thinking about this model in production as soon as possible. A model on a spreadsheet or a model in a notebook has no value. A model only has value once it's in production. And then lastly, nobody has ever overestimated the effort to work with data. We've already touched on it. There's a lot of collecting, cleaning, and transforming involved in data. You're going to spend a lot of time working with data, so get used to it and plan for it and accept it. So what is it? How do you align your business now that with what you know about AI and what you know about how AI can be used? How how do we align it with our business? So every business with a plan and a strategy has something like this. There's a vision, there are objectives, and a business want to get there over time. And every business has these kind of things they can work with and they can manipulate. There's structures. You can maybe improve the structures, you can add structures, remove structures. There are systems. Maybe you can simplify some systems. There are people, get more people, training. And by manipulating all of these things, businesses can generally move towards their objectives and reach, and maybe toward and move towards this vision. What we want to do is align that with AI, and where we can use AI to be more effective in how we work with our systems and structures in a company. And let's see how we do that. Now, a very simple tool that I often use with clients is I use a SWOT analysis. Now, I don't know, as a purely from a business perspective, if there's much value in SWOT, but that's not the point. The point is I want to get business people to start thinking about their objectives and then align it with AI. Now that we know what AI is capable of, it is a good time to identify possible opportunities in your business to align with AI. And a good way to start that process is to go through a SWOT analysis. Write down a list of strengths, write down a list of weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the next step, now that you've got a good idea of your company's strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats, is to start identifying and to link them up. Often a strength with a weakness and an opportunity can be linked up, and you can use your strengths and you can use a weakness as an opportunity. And you can see that your strength S1 with weakness W1 linked up with an opportunity can become a new project, or it can become a way to create new efficiencies in your business. Write down at least 10 to 15 of these potential projects or potential opportunities down on a list, because we want to take them through the next process, and we actually evaluate them for their propensity to be a good AI project. So now that you've got your list of 10, 15 projects, we still don't have any idea whether they might be good AI projects just yet. But we know there's a bunch of projects, and all these projects could potentially create some new efficiency in your business or a new value stream, or just help you to navigate through a threat or a weakness. Okay, so for each one of these projects, let's go through these 5 points. Number one, and you write this down. You write this down on a piece of paper or in a document. Think of the existing algorithm or process we want to replace with ML. And write it down. Secondly, and put some thought into this one. What is the benefit of doing so? Is the benefit worth the effort? Is there any benefit at all? The third one, very important one, is we might have the best idea in the world, but we simply don't have the data. Think of the data needed. Then the follow-up question is, are we collecting the data to do it? Can we buy the data? Do we need to start collecting the data? What is the data situation? And then the last question is, who are the humans involved? What are their involvement in this project? And also list that. And do that for every one of your 15 projects. Now, based on the next little 3 points or recipe, we will be able to evaluate, identify, and prioritize the most important AI projects. So, to identify your first project out of your list of projects now, it's very important to pick a project that can show value soon, almost immediately. And I would say if a project can show value in 3 to 6 months, it's a very good thing. You don't want a project that's going to take you 2 years to develop. By that stage, you've lost trust. You might have lost funding, and technology has already moved on and changed. So make sure that you pick a project that can show value in 3 to 6 months. And then again, when you take a project, immediately think with production in mind. We want to get this project in production. A project has no value unless it is in production. And then thirdly, an important one, and we've already touched on this. I'm looking at Google and looking at the 4,000 and counting models that Google has in production, is make sure you think about AI as a platform in your business. AI is not one little model that integrates with one system. If you look at as AI as a platform, there will be multiple of your teams and departments that can get value from your model. And if you do that across multiple models, you get that compound effect, and you are well on your way towards an AI-driven company. If you follow these steps with every one of your projects, it's easy to identify the first project and to get going with that first project. Now, AI is hard, and it's hard for everyone, but it also improves everything it touches, and it can be a great differentiator for your business. It is now up to you. Take the first step, choose a simple problem, and solve it. Do it again, but only this time a little bit bigger and better. Thank you for your time, and if there are any questions or comments, you can get hold of me on my email address in the bottom left here, Dries at deeplearning-café.com. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.